Hello YouTube! So in this video I want to talk about the swamping problem. This is a problem in epistemology of explaining why exactly knowledge is more valuable than mere true belief. So the assumption made by the vast majority of epistemologists is that knowledge is true belief plus something else. So traditionally knowledge was viewed as justified true belief. So we would say that S knows that P just in case S believes that P is true, and S has justification for their belief that P. Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of other analyses of knowledge on the table as well, but again, for most of them, the assumption is that we're going to have true belief plus a bunch of additional things. And the swamping problem is the problem of explaining what the value of these additional things is supposed to be. Like, why should we care about having knowledge rather than mere true belief? Why isn't true belief enough? So this is a very old problem. It goes back to Plato's Meno. The example given there was of somebody having a true belief about the way to Larissa. So if I have the true belief that this road is the way to Larissa, that's going to get me to Larissa just as well as the knowledge that this is the way to Larissa, right? Like if I have a true belief that this road is the way to Larissa, that'll get me to Larissa just as well as having the justified true belief that this is the way to Larissa. Now, of course, we can fairly easily come up with a sort of instrumental reasons why we might want to do things like look for justification. So it may well be that if you search for the justification for your beliefs, then you're more likely to acquire true beliefs. We might say something like that. But in that case, the justification for justification, right? Like the value of gaining justification is merely instrumental. It's merely a means to acquiring more true beliefs. But what a lot of epistemologists think is that there's something more to the value of knowledge than it sort of being than it merely like being a result of processes that allow you to acquire more and more true beliefs. Right? There's so the true belief that P is the mere true belief that P is going to be less valuable than the knowledge that P. And the swamping problem is the problem of explaining what the value of knowledge is. Because the reason why it's called the swamping problem is that it seems that the value of knowledge is swamped by the value of true belief. Okay then, so my thoughts on this problem. So, first of all, it seems to me that I'm not sure why the answer can't be as simple as this. I just value whatever knowledge is just for its own sake. I mean, ultimately, our attitudes are going to bottom out in certain fundamental values, or at least they can do, it seems. You know, there are some things where I can just say, well, yeah, I mean, I just want that thing, right? I don't really see what's problematic about saying, yeah, there's no particular reason for it. I just want knowledge, and that's it, right? Like, I just happen to value justified true belief more than I value mere true belief, and that's that. But okay, maybe that's not a particularly satisfying answer to the question. I think that one of the things that puzzles me about a lot of the debate around this is that it isn't really clear to me what the value of true belief is supposed to be. So, I always feel like rather than asking the question, why is knowledge more valuable than true belief? Right? There's like an earlier question. There's a prior question, which is, well, what's the value of true belief beyond I don't know, merely useful belief, right? So why does the truth matter? If I have let's say that let's say there's like two roads or something, and I have a false belief that a particular road is the way to Larissa, but then I also have a false belief about some other road connected to that road. Like, so, in other words, like I've got this conjunction of false beliefs. Like I want to go to Larissa and I have a conjunction of false beliefs such that by acting on those beliefs, I'm going to get to Larissa anyway. So, like I start off down the wrong road and then, I think that I'm following that road. Like I think I'm following the A30, right? But then I make like a wrong turn and I'm actually ending up on the right road to Larissa. So basically, like I have two false beliefs that in conjunction get me to Larissa. These false beliefs end up like having the same effect, right? I get to where I want to go. What's the value of true belief over just these useful false beliefs? It certainly seems like there are cases where true belief isn't in itself of much value, like knowing the exact number of hairs on my arm, for instance. That maybe I could have a true belief about that, but would that be valuable? Probably not. Moreover, there are cases where, arguably, there are certain false beliefs that could be very valuable. So something like, for instance, the sky is blue. Now, maybe you think the sky is blue is true, that's fine, but there's, pretty good arguments for thinking that actually this belief is false. So we might say, well, colour, for instance, is just an illusion. This is a view that's taken perfectly seriously, right? Or at the very least, we might think that there's some sort of error in our colour concepts. So maybe colour concepts presuppose that colour is an intrinsic property of the surfaces of objects. Actually, it turns out it is no such thing. So when we look at colour science, there's no real way of reducing colours to being properties of the surfaces of objects. So maybe statements about the colours of things, maybe those statements are just all false. But it's still very useful to categorise things as having particular colours. Similarly, if I say something like the sky is blue, well, maybe when I talk about the sky, right, that presupposes that there is this particular object or this surface, and of course we know that there is no such thing. The sky is this appearance created by the scattering of light, and then that scattered light scatters through the atmosphere, and that creates the appearance of this blue thing above us. Okay, so we have reasons for thinking that the sky is blue might actually just be false, but maybe it's still useful. Similarly, moral claims like slavery is wrong. If we are error theorists, we might say that these beliefs are false. Moral beliefs are all false, but they can still be useful. So the point is, there are cases where it looks like true beliefs, or what would arguably be true beliefs, don't really matter that much and aren't of much value, like having a true belief about the number of hairs on my arms. And there are cases where it looks like false beliefs can be very valuable. If we are error theorists about morality, we might well still insist that morality is a really useful and important and worthwhile institution, and that we should continue making moral claims. Okay, why does the truth matter? I mean, it's maybe worth thinking about, there's a nice story by, I'm probably not going to pronounce his name right. The name looks like it's pronounced Jose Luis Borges. It's probably pronounced something more like Jose Luis Borges or something like that. But he gives this nice analogy of a bunch of cartographers who are trying to create the perfect map of a city. And of course, you start off, when you start making this map, maybe you just draw something on an A4 piece of paper, okay? But then you want to add more information to the map. So the paper gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You add, you draw more and more things representing particular parts of the city. And then maybe, you start thinking, okay, well, instead of just having like a flat sort of 2D surface, we want to start actually representing the three-dimensional features of things in this city. So we start like building a little model, like our map becomes a kind of scale, like a model of parts of the city. And then we make the model bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was eventually what you end up with is a copy of the city. And at that point, it's like, okay, so we've gained more and more and more and more true beliefs. What we end up with is something that, like, okay, we start off with something that is a representation of the city. And of course, what we end up with is, I suppose, some sort of achievement. It's an achievement in some sense. But it's not actually obvious that we would treat what we end up with as a kind of epistemic achievement. Or it's not obvious that we would treat this like perfect model or perfect map as even representing the city. We might just say, well, it's not a representation of the city, it's just a copy of the city. Like if I just create a perfect copy of something, that's not a map anymore. So the point of a map is that it's supposed to simplify and idealize and give me a kind of it's supposed to give me a simpler representation of something, so that I can interact with that thing in a way that like draws attention to the relevant properties or something like that. If I just have a copy, then that can't really serve as a map. Suppose that we were to reach the the end of science, as it were, and we were to develop a perfect map of the world. Okay, and and now what, right? What do we do with that? What's so special about that? That's not. I don't think that's obvious. I mean, of course, we can say, look, we just value truth in itself. That's fine. But again, you can say the same about knowledge, right? If it's okay to say, well, truth is just like one of our basic aims, it's one of our fundamental aims, we value that in itself, then the same answer can be given to the original swamping problem, because we can just say knowledge is just valuable in itself. When we think about why exactly do we care about having true beliefs? The obvious answer is that true beliefs usually, but not always, they usually enable me to get what I want. So truth is instrumentally valuable. It's if I have true beliefs about the way the world works, I'm going to be in a better position to get the things that I want. But of course, first of all, if we cash out the value of true beliefs in those sorts of instrumental terms, then it seems like true belief is not going to have any value beyond merely useful belief, right? So there can be false useful beliefs that serve the same function in terms of getting you what you want. So if you say that what's valuable about having true beliefs is that it allows you to get what you want, well, it's not truth that matters, it's utility. And that can be served by false beliefs. And again, it's very easy to come up with cases where false beliefs are actually going to be perfectly useful. It doesn't seem to me that the value of true belief is similarly going to be swamped by the value of merely useful false belief. Now, I mentioned that, of course, we can just say that truth is intrinsically valuable, right? We can just say that truth is a basic value that we have, and maybe there isn't even any further reason for it. But of course, somebody could say the same about knowledge. Indeed, somebody could say the same about justification, or whatever other property in addition to true belief is required for knowledge. And actually, I think that there's some reason to prefer the view that justification is what's intrinsically valuable, rather than the view that truth is what's intrinsically valuable. So, the reason for this is that on at least some theories of justification, we have access to justification in a way that we don't exactly have access to truth, right? So, let's say that we are internalists about justification, right? So ultimately, the justification for a belief is going to depend on, like reasons or evidence that is available to me, that, like, I can be consciously aware of. So I can access the reasons for my beliefs, right? If you ask me, Kane, why do you believe P, right? Why do you believe such and such? I can tell you a story, I can like look inside my head and get the reasons for that belief. Or maybe I can just sort of come up with some post hoc rationalization, right? I can invent the reasons in the moment. We probably do that as well. But the point is that I can like search for justification in the sense of giving reasons for my beliefs. So justification seems to be something that, on at least some theories of justification, is accessible to me. It's like consciously accessible to me. By contrast, beliefs are not going to come with the label like true, right? Like when I sort of look inside my head and I think through all of the beliefs I hold, it's not like, I have one belief that sort of says like true and then another belief that says false. In fact, if I thought that one of my beliefs was false, I would just give up that belief, right? Probably. So, what I can do is I can notice that some of my beliefs have good reasons in support of them, and some of those beliefs don't have good reasons in support of them. I can't like just see that some of my beliefs are true and some of my beliefs aren't, or at least insofar as I make the assessment that some of my beliefs are true and some of my beliefs aren't. That assessment is just going to be based on whatever the reasons are for and against those beliefs. I can kind of, I have access to my reasons for beliefs. And of course, I can appreciate those reasons just for their own sake. So when I think about a particular belief, and I think about the justification I have for that belief, I think about the reasons I can give for that belief, I might well find that like those, like having this kind of structure in my mind of like a belief that follows from particular reasons, I might find that satisfying. I might find that pleasing in some sort of way. And so it makes sense that I would consider that to be just intrinsically valuable. That's just worthwhile just in itself. So actually, with respect to this swamping problem, I'm more inclined to say it's not that true belief swamps knowledge. Rather, it's that justification swamps truth, right? So the question that, like the traditional question has been, well, okay, suppose we have a true belief, what's the additional value in having justification? I'm more inclined to think, like true belief, who cares about truth, right? Suppose I have a justified false belief, or a useful false belief, and it's never going to be revealed to me that it's false. So, like, I can cite reasons for the belief serves me perfectly well in my dealings with the world. Okay, what would be the additional value in that belief becoming true? I don't know. That's a much more difficult question to answer. Like, if you ask me what's the value of justification, I think I can. Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that's valuable about justification is that if my belief has justification, then I'm going to say something like, well, I have reasons for the belief, and I can appreciate those reasons for their own sake. I can like use those reasons in conversation with other people. So I mean, there are reasons why I might care about justification. So if I have a justified belief and it serves me perfectly well in my dealings with the world, it's never going to be revealed that the belief is false, what would be the additional value in that belief being true? So like maybe compare sort of, a kind of sailor in the ancient world, right? And this sailor has a false belief in Ptolemaic astronomy. Now, compare that to somebody in another possible world, right, who is in exactly the same situation, right? They're like an ancient sailor. They believe that in Ptolemaic astronomy, but in this possible world, Ptolemaic astronomy is actually true. Okay, so we've got like two people in exactly the same situation. They have the same justification. They can cite the same reasons. Um, why does the true belief have more value? Um, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, this is basically my kind of take on the swamping problem would be, uh, I think that it isn't obvious to me what makes true belief something worth having. Um, and of course, it's perfectly fine for someone to say, look, I just value the truth just in itself. But then you can value justification just in itself. And actually, I feel like there are the idea that justification might be like just valuable in itself is kind of more attractive to me. So yeah, um, I don't find the swamping problem to be really that much of a problem. Yeah, or at least I would say that in the vicinity of this problem, there is a deeper problem, which is the problem of why the hell would true belief matter? And actually, I suppose one can kind of push this a bit further, right? So I've been assuming here that belief matters. I've been sort of saying, well, having a useful false belief is just as good as having a true belief. But one can imagine certain like organisms or whatever that like just act without actually having any of these representations at all, without having beliefs at all. So the question would then be, well, what's the value of like having a belief? I mean, so if I have certain desires for things and then my like this biological system just acts in particular ways without me first forming a belief, what would be the additional value in having any belief whatsoever? But I guess that would be another topic. Topic for another day. Okay.